So, the supply drop, this was when exactly?
Right around the time we saw the ceasefire starting to break down. Must be more than a year ago now.
So, at that time, your camp was in the center of town.
Yeah, things were getting pretty desperate, though. I remember we hadn't been resupplied in months. No food, water, medicine. We were used to issues with logistics, but I don't know, in the end it got so bad U.S. forces prepared an airdrop. Not an easy task considering, but those crates, they really were life and death. That's why we needed somebody on the ground. Someone to make sure they came down okay.
And who was that?
A guy named Adams, part of the NATO peacekeeping force. Close friend of mine, actually. It was his job to locate a drop zone.
In the mountains?
Mm-hmm. Needless to say, High Command always had ideas, but they weren't always good. Plus, no one had planned for those crosswinds flaring up. But our supplies were already in the air.
He made a spur-of-the-moment decision.
Pretty much, yeah. Although he described it with more, direct language.
Adams, he went out alone?
From the way he told it, he may as well have. No, he went along with some new recruits, local bunch. It was his job to show them the ropes.
Something I'm not quite clear on. Why didn't IDAP transport the aid themselves? There must have been a reason.
Yeah, there was. A couple of weeks previously, guerrillas had ambushed a convoy. It was some dissident group out to sabotage the peace talks in Ravala. Anyway, NATO intervened and the whole thing just blew up. A checkpoint was hit. Protesters were fired upon at the MOD.
Yes, we were there. AAN.
Then you know how bad it got.
Our movements were limited by the government.
Exactly. And convincing anybody to reassign troops, to escort NGOs, just a total non-starter. We'd met on a previous deployment. This guy was your typical Army lifer. Cynical, sarcastic, big heart, pissed off with everyone, everything, all the time. but he always seemed to know where to find a beer, and was always willing to share it. A ways up the road from our encampment, there was a small farmstead. As far as drop zones went, it was as good a spot as any.
Waiting. Waiting.
You mentioned something about the breakdown of peace talks, the situation blowing up. What happened there, from your perspective?
Well, for one thing, the change in the peacekeeping mandate came out of the blue. We heard the pressure came down the pipe from CSAT. They had the leverage.
You mean it was in their interest to kick NATO off the mainland?
Maybe. Certainly the government had become frustrated with NATO and vice versa.
I suppose they blame NATO for their, more sympathetic approach.
Hearts and minds, Adams used to tell me. But the others said they just didn't have the guts for it, couldn't do what needed to be done.
Get in that vehicle.
Will go. No can do. Ready.
Leventis, board that vehicle.
Copy. Ready. Standing by.
Dismount.
Solid copy. Waiting. Ready. Ready.
Move 100 meters, right.
Solid copy. Ready.
Gekas, move right. Leventis, move back.
Copy that. Ready. Standing by.
Petros, move up.
Waiting.
Watch south. Danger. Stay low!
Adams wasn't stupid. He knew the drop zones he'd been given were flawed. Information was always getting to the enemy.
You're saying they were compromised? By the guerrillas, I mean.
I don't know for sure, but Adams was the kind of guy to take extra precautions.
One thing I don't understand, what were they doing there, all the way up in the mountains?
The town, Oreo Castro, this place has historic ties with the guerrillas. For years, people here would provide them with food, water.
I see.
The government responded by draining the swamp.
And that involved sending soldiers?
Yeah, coin ops. Adams and his guys were there to remind them of their R2P.
Just a sec, I'm getting a bit lost in the lingo here.
Oh, gotcha. R2P is their responsibility to protect. Counterinsurgency can get real messy real quick. He was in charge of training, laws of armed conflict, that kind of thing. Adams normally tossed out an orange smoke grenade, which marked his position for the pilot.
Smoke out!
So, these crates, were there a lot of them, or...?
No, just 4. One contained medicine, another fresh drinking water. The rest were packed with rice or grain. Adams had to inspect each one individually. Later, we'd arrange collection. The medical items, you can imagine how pleased we were to see those arrive.
So they landed safely?
Yeah, they were fine. Now, the thing with airdrops, they're not exactly subtle. Smoke, noise of the plane, those bright green parachutes, can get you noticed. And when you're in the middle of bandit country, that's a problem.
Engage that technical!
Contact, soldier! Car, 400 meters, south. Hostile down.
South. Soldier, 200 meters, right!
Target neutralized.
Sniper, 200 meters, front!
Target's down.
The guerrillas attacked.
Yeah, from what I heard, it was pretty intense. I don't have the numbers, but maybe 6 or 7 were killed. As I recall, the bottles of purified water were fine. We'd been waiting on those for weeks. It wasn't uncommon for the sacks of grain to split on impact, but that time, we got lucky. He didn't lose a single one. Thankfully, the rice seemed okay.
And what happened when the supplies had been secured?
Adams would fire a flare. Back at the camp, of course, we'd heard all the gunfire, but that flare, when we spotted it, I don't know, felt like finding a moment of hope or something.
Sure. I can only imagine. And thanks for sharing. It puts a human perspective on my work. Speaking of which, your friend, Do you think he'd be willing to contribute further? Even, off the record? What with the topic of my article, having an expert, an instructor on the laws of war.
Look, I'm sorry. I know he'd help out however he could, but listen, he died on Stratus. Year and a bit later. Landmine.